So, Dre, true or false? Chicago deep dish is superior to New York style thin slice.
False. 100% false.
Welcome back to Motorsport 101.
I'm not here for lasagna unless I specifically ask for it. Hi guys, welcome to episode 465 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and yes, as RJ alluded to, I am back on British soil. Yeah, it was an amazing time in America, I must say.
I'm happy for you, man.
It was beautiful.
So you're convinced that we're not as crazy as the craziest of our citizens have made us out to be?
RJ, I'm British.
Fair point.
I just thought I'd set the stage for you here. It's like, I can't really say shit as a British person. You know what I mean?
I hear you, buddy. How was it?
It was wonderful. It was, the weather was perfect. It was warm, but it wasn't like stupidly warm. It was a dry heat, so it wasn't humid. So my Jamaican ass didn't get extremely pasty. The weather was great. Like I said, the people were all very nice, very kind. Seemed to be a weird thing about my accent. People seem to really enjoy that for some reason, which I thought that was quite funny. So that was really cool. Got to do New York. New York was hectic, to say the least. And we actually missed our train back home because we couldn't navigate through the blocks properly, which was a bit of both of our fault, really.
Have I told you my Times Square story on the pod?
No, go for it.
So me and my partner went to Times Square on Christmas a few years ago, and like by the time we drove in from Connecticut to New York City, I was like, man, I've got to use the restroom. But there's one problem. New York City businesses do not typically have public restrooms lining Times Square. So I stopped in a 7-Eleven. I'm thinking they got one. I'm like, no dice. So as I am doing the pee-pee dance in the middle of Times Square, when it's frigid cold in the middle of Christmas, I'm just like, I guess we'll go into Penn Station. And it turns out that Penn Station, the train station underneath Madison Square Garden, is the one public restroom inside Times Square.
That's the only one.
Yeah, it's the only one.
Wow. Like that is alarming, considering there was one in the McDonald's I was staying at. But always go for the McDonald's, RJ. How many times have I got to tell you this?
You're right. I'll keep that in mind for next time. But yes, how'd you enjoy New York City? Did you enjoy a slice of Newark style cheesecake?
I didn't have cheesecake, but I did get Joe's Pizza, the famous Joe's Pizza from the Spider-Man movies and every celebrity endorsement you can think of. God, it was beautiful. Oh, it pisses on everything British-wise in terms of pizza. That is a proper New York slice. The fold, the crunch into the crust, the cheese and sauce ratio. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh,
I need to get up some of that.
It did things to me. I was half tempted to get back in the queue so I could spend the $30 to bring a whole pie back to the hotel room. And yeah, the hotel, I was staying like literally a 5-minute walk from the Empire State Building, the Hilton that's it's just outside Times Square. And like, it was the 22nd floor and my hotel room had a balcony in it. One, the hotel had 39, which is terrifying to me because I'm also scared of heights, which doesn't exactly help. Mm-hmm. And then second of all, you can see the Empire State Building and it is in the clouds. That is how tall that building is. Like it's like King Kong without the gorilla. It's crazy how high up you are without even realizing how high up you are. It is terrifying, but that was fun. Doing Philadelphia was fun.
You did Philly too. I'm like, damn, this is coming in like cities that have given you bad Super Bowl memories in recent years.
Oh, don't worry. I gave the Lincoln Financial Field the finger as I parked up outside it.
It would be respect.
Yeah, like I'm not here for Big Dick Nick. I have memories. I'm not here for the Philly special. But I did go to the Phillies gift shop across the road, and my very lovely girlfriend Gloria did buy me a Bryce Harper Cooperstown jersey as a birthday present. So thank you, Gloria.
Is it like the '80s jersey that they would wear sometimes during like this last playoff run?
Yeah, it's the blue one.
Oh
yeah.
Man, that's a division rival, and even I'm like, that looks so good.
It's a beautiful jersey. It really is. It's a fine addition to my collection. And she also got me a Patriots jersey, the red throwback one with my name on the back. It's beautiful. I was absolutely spoilt rotten. So, Gloria, I know you're listening to this. Thank you. So she listens to every show. So, big shout out to her. I was looked after. I was spoilt rotten for my birthday because this was also a big reason why I turned 31 this past Thursday. So, thanks to everyone who sent all their birthday wishes in. I am now 31, which is a terrifying thought for all involved. But yeah, thank you for all the kind words, all the support, it's good. I miss it very much already. I'll certainly be heading back over there probably sometime during the off season. Hopefully, we can make it more of a habit. But for now, it was beautiful. Now, just a quick update, podcast wise, on what's going on here right now. Now, we would have been talking about MotoGP at Austria this weekend, but we insist on having Cam on for biking shows and. Sadly, Cam's internet's a bit patchy at the moment, so we're going to kick that to next week. Also, we're both a little bit below 100%. I'm battling a chesty cough. It doesn't sound like it.
We ruled out COVID, by the way.
Thank God it wasn't COVID.
We know it's back on the surge, despite everybody's best attempts to convince everybody that this is not happening again. But it's not COVID this time. Thank goodness for that.
Thank goodness it's not COVID. Yeah, it's just I tend to get one of these a year. Like my chest is generally quite weak, annoyingly. Luckily, I think I'm through the worst. I think it might be more allergy related, funnily enough. But
same here.
But yeah, like that's a rough one, and RJ's battling an ear infection right now. But we're gonna get through it.
I think I'm over it, but like they misdiagnosed it, so there's no pain. But I'm playing the role of the late comedian Dave Chappelle as the rapper Fisticuff, who cannot hear out of one of his ears, at least not that well. Again, very sad that he passed away in that plane accident after the second season, never to do anything again. What a shame. But yeah, cannot hear out of my left ear that well. It's very strange. Hopefully, by next week, this will be done with. I will have full hearing in both of my ears. I will not be scared to put my AirPods in.
That would be a plus. We'll try and work that out. So we're a little bit lacking in energy, but we will get through this. And for this edition, we thought we'd do something different for a mid-season F1 review. Welcome to our edition of Buy or Sell. Now, me and RJ have beat our heads together and come up with some interesting statements in regards to the 2023 season in general, and we will have a little back and forth between ourselves and ask whether we buy or sell the following statement. Now, as RJ quite rightly put as a disclaimer in our notes, these statements do not necessarily reflect the views of our panelists themselves. We'll tell you our own thoughts on that later. It's going to be a fun hour or so where we go back and forth on some key statements over the course of the 2023 season. So far before the real season gets underway again this weekend at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix. Max Verstappen with a chance to make history to tie Sebastian Vettel's 9-race winning streak record. We'll have to wait and see if that holds up. But places you can find us real quick before we get into that. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to find our personal handles, you can at Dre_WTF1 and at RJ O'Connell. Our website is motorsport101.com if you want some extra thoughts on MotoGP's Austrian Grand Prix weekend. My DRR on that episode went up today. Some good thoughts on Pecco Bagnaia and why I think the world champion might actually be not getting the respect he deserves because he completely dominated the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. Laid waste to the field on that one. Johan Zarco's big move to LCR Honda was officially announced as well, so some thoughts from me on that one. And Judge Dredd is back talking about Jorge Martin's attempts to play bowling. It's a fun time. So do check that out if you haven't already. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our episodes normally, but it's only $1 for the rest of this month. So this is we've got a week and change left on that offer. So please do support if you want to can already. And there's no better time for it. And of course, if you can get into the Supporters Club of our Discord server, you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded if you back us at the $10 level. And that includes Jason. So hi, Jason. Hope you enjoyed the show, buddy. Thanks for listening in, as ever. But without further ado, let's get into Buy or Sell, the F1 2023 mid-season review.
I pitched the idea of a mid-season Formula One review, but if we did in our usual format, all we'd be doing is talking about, well, Red Bull is flattening everybody. There's no hope for the rest of the field. It's just a matter of how much we're going to run up the score. So I decided, why not switch it up a bit? I've come up, and Dre's come up with a number of statements, and we're going to either buy or sell. We're going to say true or false either one of these to see if we agree or disagree. These are statements based on what we already know from this season, what we could know in the near future. So let's just jump into it, and we'll start with a Red Bull-related statement. If you're a fan of Formula One, you should be rooting for Red Bull to run the table and win every race this season, because it's unlikely you'll ever see a team this dominant in a season again.
Ooh. Don't know how I feel about that one. Like, I've heard this come up on my own day jobs podcast, the Hot Takes Wednesday podcast, which you can listen into over there on WTF1.com. I get the argument, but, you know, this is something we've never seen before. And, you know, we could... It's a bit like in baseball when you're watching potentially a perfect game, or a 300 in a game of bowling potentially, you know, where it's like, okay, at a certain point, you kind of stop rooting for your own success and you kind of hope the other guy gets it to a degree, because that's cool. And
yeah,
like I can see the argument there, definitely.
Yeah, like I'll tell you for free, like I jumped on the 2007 Patriots bandwagon for no other reason other than I wanted to see a perfect season. So I feel you on your David Tyree related frustrations.
You had to go there because my brother me and my brother was watching a video earlier today from NFL Films. The top 10 most devastating losses, and number one was that Super Bowl with David Tyree in the helmet catch. Yeah, so I know exactly how that feels. Look, I'm never going to actively root for Red Bull normally, but I know enough about how F1's sausage is made that dominance is kind of the norm in how this sport gets down. Obviously not to this kind of degree normally, but I'm okay with that, so to speak. And for me, why not at this point? Like, but both titles are already wrapped up. Red Bull is going to walk away with the drivers and the constructors. It's a matter of how early do they win it more than anything else. Sod it. Why not just have them run the table at this point, just to say it's never been done and it may never happen again? The perfect season has never been done in F1. The nearest we got was what? McLaren in 88?
McLaren in 88, and all it took was one wacky race where Ayrton Senna had in the bag only to trip up over the Williams of substitute driver Jean-Louis Schlescher to ruin the whole thing, giving us a Ferrari 1-2 at their home Grand Prix in Monza.
I think the nearest you've come in recent times was, 2016 Mercedes, when I think they won 19 out of 21 that year, which is a remarkable feat in its own right, given the season's bigger now than it was back in the 80s, certainly. I'm going to buy on this statement. Look, we have nothing else to play for here. We might as well get a record broken. If we're going to sit through 8 months of Formula One with a team completely dominating, go all the way with it. Fuck it. Bye.
We just went through like three or 4 weeks of like everybody moaning like, oh, summer break's so long. And everybody's excited to come back and they know what's going to come around the bend. I buy, like, I would be fascinated to see it, but I'm selling the likelihood of this actually happening because there are so many pitfalls. Like, not even Max Verstappen's had a perfect season. Like, this is as close to perfect as we're going to get, but I feel like at some point, a component on a car is going to break. He's going to get caught up in somebody's accident through no fault of his own. Or, he could potentially be parked for speeding in his Aston Martin Valkyrie. Well, maybe not.
Yes, 74 miles an hour is ill-advised on a public street in Aston Martin Valkyrie.
Dude, 74 miles an hour on, like, your typical Massachusetts, like, freeway, that's just, like, you're holding up the left lane, buddy.
Exactly. Again, that was glorious driving there for you. But, yeah, like... I still think there's a reasonable chance this happens. I think the bigger issue for me is that something could easily happen to Max. The issue I have is that Sergio Perez is not a reliable enough safety net for me in current circumstances for me to think that if something does happen to Max, that Checo won't be able to clean up the mess. That's what worries me. Is that if something were to happen to Max or he's not in contention for a race, would Checo be good enough to be able to finish in second every weekend to back him up? And as this season has proven, if you take Perez even the slightest bit out of his comfort zone, he struggles. And that's a problem. So I'm still going to buy on this, but it's with an asterisk. I would say buyer beware, because there's still a lot of ways this can go wrong.
This is a high-risk investment.
Oh, yeah, like there's only one way this goes right. Well, there's only a few ways this goes right, but there's very, very, very many more ways this goes wrong. So this is a high-risk investment, but I would still say buy.
I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the undefeated Mob for winning the Slam Ball Season 6 playoffs. 18-0 record, perfect throughout the regular season and playoffs. That is my inspiration. Who knows? Maybe I could see 2 perfect seasons of equal magnitude in my lifetime in the same year. I'm not going to do a statement about the Red Bull's second seat, so I want to come up with something for another Red Bull-owned team. Whether or not he wins the Super Formula Championship in October, Liam Lawson has done enough and will be Yuki Tsunoda's new teammate at whatever we're calling AlphaTauri next year. This statement is twofold.
This is a tricky one for me, right? Because Liam Lawson has been good enough to be in an F1 seat for a year and a half, in my opinion now. Like I think he's been F1 quality for a little while. He's talented. He's versatile. He knows what he's doing. He can win in anything you put him in right now. He's good enough. Give him the seat. However, now they've put Daniel Ricciardo in, and the team is, and the Red Bull umbrella has constantly made statements about that. Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is going for that Red Bull seat in 2025. He's made that his aim. He wants to bring the band back together. He's okay with being a number 2 driver now in a top team at this point in his career. I think they've made so many statements along those lines since coming back, and that they've not exactly been the most endorsing of Sergio Perez this season, that I'm going to sell on this because I just think that Lawson's not the sexy pick anymore. And that's the problem. I don't think he's ever been the sexy pick for an AlphaTauri / Red Bull seat, because he's been their reserve for 2 years now. And they still haven't, like, last year it was Colton Herta. This year, it's Daniel Ricciardo jumping the queue. So, it's like, it feels to me like they've put Lawson in there because they treat Super Formula like their finishing school. Which they have with Pierre Gasly.
And they were going to do it with Dan Ticktum until, well, and they tried to do it with Pato O'Ward until, well.
I sense a pattern emerging here. But with all that in mind, I'm going to sell on this one. I just feel like if Red Bull truly believed in Liam Lawson, they would have put him in the seat by now already. If he feels more like a proper reserve than he ever does a guy that could have a successful F1 career.
I buy it. Daniel Ricciardo, at his age, he'll be 35 next year. I don't think spending another year at Faenza, Bulls Racing, AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, whatever we're calling it next year, is his benefit, even if he does want a Red Bull seat in the near future. I think for Ricciardo, it's got to be Red Bull or bust next year. And if you're looking at who's available on the table, Liam Lawson's your guy. If you weren't convinced that he was the guy in Formula 2, you'd have to be convinced that after a 3-win rookie season in Super Formula, which it rarely ever happens. The only one who's ever done this was a Schumacher. You'll be surprised which one it was. He's doing this against top-of-the-line professionals in an environment that's closer to Formula 1. I think Liam Lawson is your guy to build around at Bulls Racing. If you don't know if Yuki Tsunoda is going to be within the fold in the next couple of years because Honda's changing manufacturer allegiances, do you think Yuki's going to be at this team next year? I think so.
I think Tsunoda stays no matter what. I think they'll give Perez the rest of his contract. And I don't think you bring back Daniel Ricciardo just to do 10, 11 Grand Prix and just say, oh, thanks for coming back for the rest of the season, Daniel. Off you go. Back to being a broadcaster and doing watch-alongs with BoJack Horseman. I just don't see the point in that. If Daniel knew what that was going to be going in, I don't think he would have agreed to come back so quickly.
No, he would have wanted to come back for a shot at like a top seat at Red Bull, which is why I think 2024 has got to be it.
I think Daniel can afford to wait another year if the opportunity really is there, and if he truly believes he's got a shot at getting back into Red Bull for 2025, he'll wait the extra year. And if that happens, sorry, Lawson, there's no room at the inn for you. So I'm going to sell on this.
Dre, I understand you have a statement related to the hottest non-Red Bull team in the paddock.
Yeah. Oscar Piastri's rise to solid midfielder and a podium challenger has become overrated.
It was a tough start to the year for Oscar Piastri, but I think we can all agree that it wasn't necessarily his fault. Like, Red Bull, McLaren started the year with an absolutely garbage car. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it. And if you look at the head-to-head results over the course of the full season, Lando Norris has comprehensively been the better driver. But now that they are in a position where they can score points on the regular, we hope that they're not going to fall off now that the summer break is over. Oscar Piastri has been able to run right with Lando Norris, if not ahead of him most times. I'm going to sell. I think Oscar Piastri is going to be a problem for Lando Norris's value on the free agent market because we know Lando's coming up to the end of his contract at McLaren, and he's in a very difficult position. He's in a similar position to what Max Verstappen was a few years ago. Do you want to stay loyal to this McLaren team? Not sure if they are ever going to ascend beyond the level of what they are now. Or do you try the open market with a team like a Mercedes, a Ferrari, Audi, etc.? And if Norris is not decisively the number one driver anymore, that might give some teams pause.
Where does Norris go? Because Norris is good, but he's messed around with Red Bull because Red Bull has been interested in signing Lando Norris in the past. They were interested in kicking Brendan Hartley to the curb after a handful of races to put Lando Norris in the car. Yeah, exactly. Red Bull's always been high on Norris, but I think they're going to give Perez the rest of his contract first, so that'll be at least another year, and Norris is tied down till 2025 anyway. He's got 2.5 more years left on his McLaren contract. And the way I see it, when was the last time people were this excited about a driver who is 9-3 down in races head-to-head against Norris? It's funny how perception is 9/10 of the law in this game when it comes to rookie drivers. I'm going to buy on this just a little bit. I mean, this is a close one for me because, people need to chill on Oscar just a little bit. Like, I say this because he was kind of in, for me, he kind of got a free pass for this season because McLaren started out the year so terribly. That probably helped him out. And now he's gotten the upgrade package. He's proven he can run reasonably close to Norris on a couple of occasions. The sprint was in Belgium was excellent. Silverstone was the one that really leaps off the page to me. Hungary, his tyre wear wasn't great, and even before he had the Perez damage from the incident he had with him. I think people need to calm down just a little bit on Piastri. Don't get me wrong, he is exactly what McLaren needs right now. They need a second driver. Whoop. Swallowed my cough sweet there by accident. But they need a second driver who is reliable, consistent, and can bring the car home in the points. They've got that. But if we're evaluating drivers in terms of their overall ability, how long do you give Piastri a pass before you say, well, you should be giving Norris more of a fight week to week? How long do you give him on that before that sort of rookie expectation goes away and you now start looking at Piastri like a serious contender down there? Because Norris has had that, for me, Norris has been that guy for a good 2 or 3 years already. And I wonder, like, if we're evaluating Piastri as a rookie, he's been very, very good. If we're evaluating him as a, pseudo elite level driver, like a Dragonite in Pokemon, or a Salamence or a Metagross, then I think he's been a little underwhelming so far, because I think you've got to start beating dudes like Norris eventually. So I would say very partially a buy on this, but that's mostly down to the hype people have over him more than anything. I think people just get very excited about a young, fresh-faced, polite Australian fella.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think the training wheels are going to come off for Piastri sometime in the middle of the second season, but I like what I've seen since the upgrade package has come on. The points are 69 Norris, 34 Piastri. That's nice. That's a better balance than what they've gotten for most weekends out of the last 2 years of Daniel Ricciardo, 1 weekend at Monza excluded. He's doing the job, and Piastri, like Norris, has got the pedigree. F3 champion as a rookie, F2 champion as a rookie. I know those were weird years, but he's still got the right stuff, and it'll be interesting to see how this develops over the course of the season. And Dre, might as well get to your next McLaren-related talking point.
Sure. Where did I put it now on this list? Yes, here we are. McLaren is the greatest threat to Red Bull's undefeated season.
Oh, that's for sure true. I am buying this. I'm emptying my wallet on this.
I'm also going to buy on this one because I think Lando Norris has been excellent. Since post upgrade, he's been probably the second best driver in Formula One. And I think Norris is setting himself up to win a Grand Prix later on this year if Max falters. I think he's looking good for that. I think
remember, Lando, when they tell you to switch over to wets, take the advice.
Yeah, listen in, big man.
You don't have to play hero ball.
Yeah. What I was going to say here is that I think the other major threat on that is Mercedes. But Mercedes, I think, are like the more consistent third best team right now. And I think that ultimate lack of upside, because we get it from Mercedes occasionally, like Spain, where they dominated second and third, and, like that sort of weekend. But I think Mercs are more the number 3 team at the moment. Not by a huge margin compared to McLaren, but I think they're still scoring points reasonably well. Hamilton, I think, has been excellent all season long. But I think Norris has got the most upside of anyone left on the grid not in a Red Bull at the moment. So I would say I would buy this at the moment.
Yeah, I like what I've seen out of a variety of circuits, and in particular, some of the high speed, high efficiency tracks like the Red Bull Ring, like Silverstone. We got a couple of those coming up. We got Monza, of course. Would you consider Suzuka to be because I know it's a downforce track through a lot of it, but there are also like a lot of high speed stuff. You got both races in the United States. Who knows how those are going to turn out? McLaren, assuming they don't slip up somewhere in their development, to me, have the best chance of ending the streak between any one of their drivers, I feel. Those opportunities, though, they're not going to come easy. And if McLaren feels like they're in a position to win, they cannot afford to take their foot off the gas and soft pedal it. Because I can remember Williams was in a position to take wins off of Mercedes, but they played it very conservative, knowing that they probably could have won races anyway.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely all valid. I think that's absolutely fair. I think McLaren has got the ability to give Red Bull something to think about, especially in terms of qualifying as well, because that's where Red Bull are compromising at the moment. And if they can dictate the terms of engagement, that might have to make Red Bull sweat a little bit more, and that could be interesting because Max hasn't had to come back very often in this season so far as well. That's another factor you may have to take on board as well. So overall, I'm buying this.
All right. We'll go back further in the grid. By matching the form of Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu has done enough to warrant a third season at Sauber. Let's call them Sauber. They're not going to be Alfa Romeo. We know that sponsorship is going to Haas. They're going to be Sauber, and Zhou Guanyu has done enough to warrant a third season there.
I joke that, like, Alfa Romeo are the participation trophy winners of the 2023 season so far.
They've just kind of been there.
Like, they've not been particularly dreadful. Like, and their best result was the opening round of the year when Valtteri Bottas finished 8th in Bahrain. Like, that's where the majority of their points have come from. Zhou is definitely closer to Valtteri, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And by that logic, given that Bottas has proven that if the car is good, he can score well, sure, I'll buy it. Give him a third season. They got no reason not to, really. I can't think of a real valid reason to move him on for Theo Pourchaire.
Well, it's funny because, like, and we've got supporters who are high on Theo Pourchaire and believe he should have been in Formula One already. But it's also weird because, like, yes, he's leading the championship, and yes, he's a boring third-year fun ruiner in the Formula 2 series. But you got to remember, he's younger. He's still younger than every other Formula 1 driver on the grid right now, and would probably still be the youngest driver in the sport if he gets called up next year. Probably to replace Valtteri Bottas. You never know.
Yeah, it's like I like Pourchaire. Pourchaire should be dominating Formula 2 right now, and he's not. Like, he is a very, very highly talented and gifted athlete, and he should be running this field over if he's half the talent we think he is, and he's not. And, like, he's fighting what I like to call the new and improved Federic Vesti. And Ayumu, that boy, Nice Iwasa in that freeway title fight at the moment. I think Victor Martins has also been very solid this season as well.
Yeah, he's moved up to 5th. I don't know what happened with Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan, remember, was being shopped around as a Formula 1 contender this year at a factory team, and he's only 4th in the table. It's still close. There's 6 races left in the season, and the long break between Monza and Yas Marina is doing none of these drivers any favors whatsoever in terms of their future ambitions.
Right. So for me, overall, with all of that in mind, and like it's hard to really get a read on Alfa Romeo for that very reason, because the car is just so poor that it's kind of hard to get a read on how much their drivers have an influence in it. But why not? Give Zhou a third year. I don't see any reason. Like, there's no big, obvious reason to give Pourchaire the seat besides He's Theo Pourchaire. He's young and he's gifted, right? And for me, that's not enough of a reason. So for me, yeah, I'll buy it. Yeah. Give Joe a third year. Why not?
I want to like Joe because he's likable. If people talk to him, he'll give you good answers. I want to fight off this the stereotype that Asian drivers can only get into Formula One with someone else's money. Joe's been very good, and Valtteri Bottas is no slouch. Like, people are now starting to realize that Valtteri Bottas at Mercedes was not as bad as people thought, and Zhou Guanyu has done well enough to match him in equal equipment. And in Just Society, he would be in an Alfa Romeo seat, Sauber seat, whatever we're calling them next year. Sauber with Audi technologies. I'm buying it.
I'll buy it too.
Yeah. The team with the greatest upside in the Formula One paddock, pound for pound, right now, is Williams Racing.
Buy. I'll cut to the chase. Buy. I think James Vowles has been team principal of the year. I think Vowles has done a fantastic job at Grove so far. I know people that work for that team. They gush over the speeches he lays out, the organisation he's done, the strategy he's gone in with at that team, where he's gone in and deliberately been like, okay, I'm going to push this system till it breaks. He's been remarkably honest with everybody, saying, look, some of our gear is 20 years old and 20 years out of date. This is what I had at Mercedes. This is what we had in order to be able to win. Here's what we're going to do to make improvements. And the car is better. The car is definitely better than what it was. You've got to remember, we're talking about a team that has been bottom of the Constructors' Championship 4 out of the last 5 years.
Yeah. We were worried that they were not just going to, the family was not just going to sell the team, but the team, as we know, was not going to exist at all.
Exactly. So for this for Williams to be running 7th right now, and Alex Albon's been one of the drivers of the year so far, for me, sure. But I look at all the other teams in the paddock and I go, this is the team that's got the most potential to get up the field again and to be a threat. Like, maybe Aston Martin, but you could argue they've already achieved and maybe peaked or plateaued already with, Dan Fallows and what they've done with that team over the course of this season so far, because it already looks like they've slipped a little bit since that initial car launch in the first place. So right now, given that Alex Albon went into this year saying, we just hope we're a better last compared to last year, and the fact they're running 7th right now, oh yeah, James Vowles has been outstanding at Williams so far this season. 7th would be absolutely priceless for Williams right now. So yeah, buy, 100%.
It would be huge. And I love the potential at Williams. I'm going to sell that they have the most potential because Aston Martin still has the pending deal with Honda coming up. There is potential for them to jump stratospherically up from 3rd on the grid to potential top 2 and battling for championships. And then, of course, there's the Sauber deal with Audi. Who knows if that's going to work out, but you can never rule out the potential. But I don't think they have the outright most potential. I think their upside is still limited unless they get some sort of new technical arrangement going. They're still a Mercedes customer team. They still have those dated resources that they have, but they are still on a great upward trajectory. Alex Albon has been fantastic. It's crazy to think that going into this year, we think that if Logan Sargent just runs Albon a little bit closer than Nicholas Latifi did the last 2 years, it'd be great. And now here we are, we're more than halfway into a season. We're thinking, is Logan Sargent going to keep his seat next year?
It's a harsh world because now we know what that car can do. We've now seen what Alex Albon can do with that car in the right hands, and people are going to immediately raise their expectations for Logan Sargent by comparison. If this team was still stone dead last, Logan Sargent wouldn't be drawing the criticism that he's gotten so far this year. It's just because Albon's gotten it into the top 8 on multiple occasions this season.
And it's not more. I remember Australia.
Yeah, he was Albon was running sixth when he spun out. That could have been what, 10 points?
That could have put them points. Way clear of Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri. It's tough because I feel like I've been there for every step of the Logan Sargent journey before he got to Formula One to begin with. But it's going to be very tough for him to keep that seat, especially if a certain Spanish driver from another championship really does have something lined up, something cooking to get himself on a Formula One paddock.
Oh no, not the Oriol Servia wagon.
No, I was thinking of Antonio Garcia.
Oh, of course.
I mean, it would be a weird switch from him to go from Corvette racing to Williams at this late stage in his career, but you never know. It's Alex Palou that we're talking about. We're not going to be glib with you forever. We can't be.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a punt, and I'm not sure if Palou would take on a team that's, a project still, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, to be fair, he already rebuked the services of a team that we would consider a project in the series that he races in.
Exactly. So, I'm not sure sacrificing everything and burning 2 different teams' bridges in IndyCars for the sake of a Williams F1 seat is necessarily the right move. But, hey, we've seen stranger things happen in IndyCar and F1 recently. Ask Marshall Pruitt, who is currently chugging Pepto-Bismol by the gallon.
Oh, goodness. All right, so we have a couple of questions related to the same constructor. A simple statements, these aren't questions.
Okay. I'll take your one first, RJ. This one says, this time next year, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon will get their salaries paid through Michael Andretti instead of Renault.
I'm going to sell on it being next year, but the more I think about it, because you brought this up a couple episodes ago, right? The possibility that Alpine's in disarray. We know this. They're the most in disarray, solidly midfield team that should be upper midfield, if not challenging for wins and championship regularly in the sport. There's no question about that. They have half the points in McLaren right now with half a season's head start.
Right.
But the more I think about it, the more I think maybe not next year, but 2025 is when I'm going to start to think, is Renault going to sell Alpine to Andretti Autosport, where Cadillac, their prospective technical partners, are already working with Renault on some sort of badge engineered power unit? It would be a seamless transition. It would solve a lot of problems. Michael Andretti can get into Formula One like he's always wanted. Formula One management can keep the pot small for their little exclusive club. And, it would give you another manufacturer on the grid in Cadillac through badge engineering with Renault.
Yeah, it's almost like too convenient a marriage if this all would play out the way that you said it would, RJ. It would be the win-win for all parties. Michael gets his team. Renault gets another get-out-of-jail-free card for a team they've already sold a quarter of in recent weeks. We all know that Renault's never been afraid to pull the plug on a project if they feel like they're not going to get a return on their investment.
We are all in on the A424, baby. We're going to prove the Mecha Chrome haters wrong.
Indeed. And Michael has been prepared to potentially buy a team before he tried to buy Alfa Romeo 3 years ago. That didn't work out over the politics of the deal and who had the clout to make key decisions.
I still remember that. I was expecting Colton Herta to be in an F1 car in FP1 that weekend. And then it was scrapped.
Yeah, it all just fell apart at the last minute. I'm going to sell on this one as my overall impression. Like, don't get me wrong. It's almost too convenient a marriage at this point. The only reason why I'm saying sell here is that Bruno Fernand, who is now interim team principal after Otmar Snafnauer was totally not fired, and Adam Parmain was totally not fired. He mentions the word project all the time. I remember my colleagues at the race made a video where he mentioned the word project 16 times in the space of his press conference and an interview with the written media afterwards. They're obsessed with this project, whatever the fuck they want this overall arcing objective to be. That doesn't sound like a team that's going to pull the plug in the next 2 years. That's the general impression that I get on this. It would be quite the U-turn for Alpine to suddenly say, yeah, we're selling up. We give.
A lot of crazy stuff can happen. I remember another French manufacturer had a brand new car ready to go, boots on the ground testing. And then during the middle of that testing program, Peugeot announced that they were pulling out of the 2012 FIA World Endurance Championship before it had ever launched.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time it's happened out of a French manufacturer in a major series.
Yeah, and I think remember Renault probably had a long-term game plan to stick around up until about late summer, early autumn 2009. Now, we're not saying that like Alpine has a race-fixing scandal that's been brewing in the background ready to explode out of nowhere, but like I've heard the project to me sounds a lot like the 5-year plan, the 100-race plan that everybody has taken behind the woodshed and flogged repeatedly over the stage. I want to know what's going to be different this time.
Well, it doesn't sound like anything different to me. That's the impression that I get. Again, I don't know how much of that was Bruno Fernand being flustered at the fact that, you know, decisions have been made to just cull the senior management at Alpine entirely halfway through this season.
It's a bad spot.
But, like, the math isn't mathing. That's the way I look at it. Like, if your project is this aspirational, why would you sell a quarter of your team now? Like, that is what I find weird. That, you know, you gave Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney, and, you know, Michael B. Jordan the, you know, a quarter of the team alongside this consortium. That's to raise money. You raised $200 million out of that. So that doesn't sound like a team that's going to completely pull the plug, because what are you raising that money for? They said they were going to use it to spend it on infrastructure and upgrades to their facilities. So that sounds like a team that's pushing on. I just don't know what's going on with that structure and how that place is being managed, because, I mean, Lauren Rossi was not well liked from the overall impression that I have.
Dunning-Kruger syndrome.
Dunning-Kruger syndrome. Adam Prost hit us with Dunning-Kruger syndrome. I'm like,
Alain Prost, who by the way has largely been seen as a guy that has overseen 2 failed Formula One teams during his time as owner of Prost GP and his time as Renault team principal himself.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I can't quite get there on a sell yet. I would say 4 or 5 years down the road they sell up, just not now.
On a related note, this is one from you, Dre. This is something that really speaks to me. Esteban Ocon should be next in line for a top seat in the Formula One grid.
This is a tricky one. Because for me, Ocon had a bit of a test a couple of years ago when Fernando Alonso joined the Alpine team.
Oh, yeah.
First year, you could barely split them. Very, very evenly matched. Second year, Fernando was a little bit better, is what I would say. That's the sort of driver Ocon probably needs to be matching, if not be very close to, if we're talking about him in top-level machinery. I honestly thought he'd do a better job of handling Pierre Gasly so far this season, and he hasn't.
I look at the numbers, right? Point splits 35-22, qualifying form 6-6, race finishes are 5-4 in favor of Ocon. Like, it's good. And Pierre Gasly is no slouch behind the wheel himself. If it were up to me coming up with a question, a statement I would have been really spicy and say, have we considered that the drivers are really the problem at Alpine? And I would have sold on that immediately because I don't believe that's true. It would just be something I would throw out as like a hypothetical. But to me, I love me some Esteban Ocon, but I almost feel like he's in a position now where, like, he could, if Alpine really starts to struggle, find himself completely out of the sport by the time his contract's up.
I think he fulfills his hero's dream and ends up at Ferrari in a couple of years' time to take Carlos Sainz's seat. Michael's his hero.
Yeah.
And I think if Ferrari came knocking, he'd bite their arm off. So with that in mind, I'm going to buy it. Because I think that is a move that makes a lot of sense. If the rumours are true that Audi are eyeing Carlos Sainz to front their project, which I think would be a solid pick to host their team. Sainz is one of the better midfielders in F1 when he was coming up through the ranks.
Yeah, people forget that, like, before Oscar Piastri had this hot surge, the last person who really pushed Lando Norris week in and week out was Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, it was Carlos Sainz. And I think Carlos Sainz is a very good driver. I don't think he's a great driver. But I think if Audi wants to build their project around him, I think that's a good place to start. A driver that they could potentially get who's a good mix of experienced and talented. Still a reasonable age, I think, at 27. That's a guy that you could build around in his early 30s to spearhead your project. That makes a lot of sense. And if there's a hole at Ferrari, I think either Ocon or Norris takes it. And I don't think Norris will pack up and move his shit to Italy. I just can't get there on that. I think Norris has got too many vested interests in the UK, i.e. being Formula One's leader of the Sidemen. For me, yeah, I think I'm going to buy this as Ocon to Ferrari in a couple of years' time.
I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to put it on another credit card. I'm not putting this on the card that I use for all my important purchases. I'm just going to put it on the credit card that I use for my side purchases. To be certain, Esteban Ocon has been good enough, in my opinion, to be a driver at an elite team competing for victories. He's a Formula One race winner. He has a pedigree of a junior Formula champion many, many years ago. And the reality is, Alpine should be fighting for wins and championships with Esteban Ocon as a key contributor to that. And he does have the team's one podium finish this season. I would love to see Esteban Ocon get an opportunity at Ferrari. I just think that at some point, Lewis Hamilton is going to stop racing, and I think Mercedes are going to want somebody else. I think Red Bull are going to make a switch in their driver lineup. If not this year, then end of next. Esteban Ocon's not the right fit there. I think he'll end up higher on the grid, but it would probably be as like the second biggest move of the offseason if it happens.
I think with how patriotic it is, with how he is in general, Sir Jim Ratcliffe will give his other owner, Toto Wolff, a big old phone call and a blank check and say, bring me Lando Norris. I don't care how much it will take.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, Esteban would not be like next in line, but he'll be next after next in line.
That's fair.
On a related note, Carlos Sainz should thank his lucky stars for Sergio Perez and Lance Stroll. Otherwise, he would be far and away the biggest disappointment in a top team this year.
Ooh. Have we forgotten about George Russell this season?
Yeah, that's what this is a statement that I've seen coming around in terms of like podium scored this season. And for me, this is a hard sell because like Carlos Sainz Jr.'s point split is 92 to Leclerc's 99. And also the problem at Ferrari has never been the drivers the last couple of years.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, Carlos Sainz is an interesting case. Like, he's only finished outside of the points twice this year. I think Sainz has been consistently good. I just don't think he's been outstanding, and I think that's the problem. All the upside in that Ferrari team this year has come from Charles Leclerc. Leclerc's had 3 podiums for Ferrari this year. He should have easily had more, at least Bahrain. That was one where he was running third comfortably until his electronics died. There's been the usual haunts in here and there as well. So I think with that mind, yeah, I think we are checking, etc. And I think with that in mind, I think it's made Carlos Sainz a little bit weaker than his actual season has been. I think Sainz has been fine. I don't think he's been outright bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just think he's a fine number 2 piece in that team, and I think Leclerc is a stronger Ferrari driver, and has been from day one since they've been teammates, and it's their 3rd year together. And I would say I would have more question marks about George Russell this season than Carlos Sainz.
Yeah. George Russell had a great 2022 season, but it seems like he's stepped back a little bit. Fair play to Lewis Hamilton for raising his game after a off season in 2022, but it's also a little bit of like Russell is starting to feel the pressure a little bit. He got that first win, and now there's the expectations of more, and he's been fine. He's not been letting the side completely down, but you expect more than just one podium this year.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit unlucky in Australia. I think that was another podium easily that he didn't get, unfortunately. But I think last year he was genuinely giving Hamilton something to worry about. This year, Hamilton has wrestled control of that team back away from Russell again. I think he's clearly been the much stronger Mercedes driver this year. Hamilton's not finished the race outside of the top 8 all season.
Wow.
And he's had 4 podium finishes on top of that as well. Russell's had just the 1. And with Russell, there's big highlights. Or lowlights, really, with the Canada Smash and Monaco, where he blew that podium by going down the escape road when it started raining and then clattering into Perez when he rejoined. I think Russell's just been sloppy. For a guy that made his name of being really consistent, that's worrying. And I think Russell's overall pace is outstanding. I think it's very close to Hamilton in terms of raw speed. But I think the bulletproof consistency that made George Russell what he was last year is not there this year, and that is a concern. So for me, I think Sainz gets a little bit of a reprieve with that in mind. So I would say I'd sell this one, personally.
Yeah, I'm selling it too. And like, Audi wouldn't be sniffing around with Carlos Sainz to be the leader of the team if they didn't think that he had the right stuff to be the number 1 driver in any other outfit. But the problem is, he's at Ferrari. Charles Leclerc is their guy. Charles Leclerc wants to be the guy that leads Ferrari back to championship glory. We'll see if it plays out. God, I hope it works out sometime soon. If not this year, then sometime, anytime in the next 3 years. I'm begging you, please. But no, Carlos Sainz has been fine. Don't look at the fact that he hasn't scored a podium and retired from his last race as like an indication that he's been a failure. It's just the fact that, he's been consistently good, but not very good.
That's fair. I think that's entirely fair.
I had a statement lined up for Haas for reasons that will become clear in the coming days and weeks. I've had to scratch this. So, Dre, take my backup statement related to Haas.
Nico Hulkenberg is a driver of the year contender.
You know, I was very critical when they made this move. And I, again, still think the Mick Schumacher was not as bad as people made him out to be in that second year at Haas. But
100%.
Nico Hulkenberg, 100% buying that he has been a driver of the year contender, considering he's not done the full rigors of a full-time Formula One season. He's been the driver for hire 3 years, but for a few years now. But stepping back in a full-time seat at his advanced age and generally being the best driver at the team week in and week out, my goodness, it's like he had never, ever left.
His pace has been outstanding. He's walked into that Haas team and he's out-qualified Kevin Magnussen 9-3 so far this season. That's exceptional. Like, that is incredible pace over a single lap. But again, he's been held back by Haas's biggest problem, and Haas have openly admitted it. They overheat their tyres. Their car is not conducive towards tyre wear whatsoever. They cook them very easily, and it's compromised their race pace almost every weekend so far this year. And look, the race head-to-head is a bit skewed. It says it's 6-6 between the pair of them. Yeah. I don't need the numbers to say that.
5-5 in races where they both finish, so it's pretty much even there. But, like, sometimes the qualifying stats are the more reliable metric when your car is not always capable of scoring points. Right. And in that regard, Nico Hulkenberg has been exceptional. There have been multiple times where, after all my skepticism of thinking there's no way he's going to score a podium, there have been multiple cases where I'm thinking, well, actually, maybe he could pull it off. And then the bottom just falls out, and we're all just like, oh, man.
Yeah, I think that, on the whole, I think that Hulkenberg's pace has been great. I think I said it on my WTF1 tier list for the mid-season so far. K-Mag's had one top 15 finish since his last point in Miami. That is concerning to me. I'm starting to think that Haas might have moved on from the wrong man last year, and that is...
And I get it. Like they were indebted to Kevin Magnussen because, like, after 2021, there was no hope. He comes back not expecting to be back in Formula One at all, and immediately puts them back in the points of Bahrain. So I understand that he had gotten, like, a boatload of good karma that's going to be tough to dissipate. You know, if it were me, I was thinking, like, man, Kevin Magnussen probably, like, we're seeing, like, the last F1 races of him. Now it's looking likely that it may not be the case. We'll hear more about that soon, but, you know, Hulkenberg has been outstanding. They cannot keep getting away with bringing in these veteran presence just because they're old and reliable and cheap, and it actually works. One of these days, the anti-youth movement is going to crumble, but it's not coming here because Nico Hulkenberg has been exceptional for Haas. He has not let them down.
Yep, buying. Hulkenberg's been outstanding.
We were talking about midfield contenders. Fernando Alonso has already scored his last podium of the season.
I'm going to sell this one. I think Aston has slipped a little bit since the start of the season, where they were clearly the second best team in F1. Fernando Alonso has been so good, I still think he'll get a podium or two between now and the end of the year. That's my general conclusion on that. I think Alonso, for me, would be driver of the year if it wasn't for Verstappen's brilliance.
Yeah, I think that would still be the case even if he never finishes on the podium again. Like, I didn't come into the season expecting wins, and now that Aston Martin has slipped, I am absolutely not expecting any wins unless some weird stuff happens in the last few races of the season. But, like, it's going to be tough because, like, you'd have to imagine Mercedes are still solid. McLaren have leapt ahead of them. Ferrari surely can't be as pitiful as they've been some weekends. I don't know, man. I would be pleasantly surprised, but I'm gonna meekly push this on a Facebook Marketplace with the intent to sell.
I still think there's one more in him, at least one more. I think one or two. I think Aston Martin on a good day can still do it. Although I will say this, Hungary did give me big cause for concern. That is
Fernando Alonso's home. That is like, we know Spain is his home track. Fernando Alonso partially owns rent on the Hungary historically throughout his career, no matter how bad the car has been. If he can't make it work there,
oh yeah, that's the impression that I get anyway. So yeah, I agree. I feel like I ultimately disagree. I would say this is a very meager buy. Like, give me the free trial first. On this one, I
want to haggle for it.
Well, I'm gonna try and negotiate on the price because we Brits love a haggle. But I would still say buy on Fernando Alonso getting at least one more podium between now and the end of the year.
Forking off on this, surely there's no podiums coming Lance Stroll's way, right?
Fuck no. Not been. He might be the worst driver in the field this year, pound for pound.
I don't know about that, but yeah, it's not been. It again is a reminder of like, Lance Stroll has the potential to be better than this. But this is all we're getting, and it's frustrating me because I know he can be better than this, but he doesn't ever apply himself. But that's probably another discussion for another time.
Yeah, fair to say. 2 more.
Right. Dre.
No, for real, the next Lewis Hamilton contract, we swear this time, will be his last. He's a free agent at the end of the season.
He is a free agent. We are now officially in that territory where, like, all of the silly... If like, you want an exciting, silly season, it hinges on Lewis Hamilton finally hanging it up and calling it a career at the end of this season. Like, that's where all the movement is going to come from, and it will move like a landslide. The 2026 regs are 3 years out, at which time Hamilton will be 41 years old, and he'll have many, many miles on that tread. That tread will be worn down. But Hamilton is a world-class athlete. I could see him sticking around, but I also feel like Hamilton's done everything bar that 8th championship. He could walk away. He could decide on like the Friday of the Dutch Grand Prix to call it a career. Like, he'll be regarded immediately as like one of the top 3 drivers of the sport. He doesn't need to keep doing this.
I lean towards sell here for no other reason than every impression that I get is that Lewis is desperate for number 8. He really wants that redemption for 2021. He truly believes he should have won the 2021 title. That would have been number 8. That's the last major counting stat that he hasn't had in his career. That's the one, for me, that I think leaps off the page as the one major thing that's worth fighting for. And with that in mind, I think he'd owe it to himself to at least see what these 2026 regulations are. Because if he retires beforehand, and he could easily go into his 40s, I have no question about that whatsoever.
Conditioning-wise, all these dudes could race in Formula One into their mid-40s. We've seen it with Fernando Alonso. It's just a matter of whether or not, they want to travel as much for like 24 weekends a year plus.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think that I don't think age is necessarily as big a factor as it used to be with this. And I think if Hamilton wants it, Merckx, I think he's got a golden handcuff deal at Mercedes. Mercedes will keep him as long as they need because Mercedes is not the juggernaut it is today without him.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Commercially, socially, you name it, Hamilton's a transcendent star. He's done so much for that brand, and they've done so much for him in kind. It works both ways. I think he wants number 8, and I think he will not truly be at peace until he at least sees what the 2026 regulations cook. Because if Mercedes can find their way back up to the front of the field, he's got a golden chance to get number 8, even at 41. So with that in mind, I'm going to head up eBay with the 99p minimum bid and sell on that.
No, I hear you. Like, it's funny. Like, my dad's not the biggest Lewis Hamilton fan, but even he agreed that he didn't agree with how the 2021 finish played out, though not to the level of extremity that some disagree how that season played out at the very end. I think Lewis Hamilton is fit enough that, of course, he can continue racing until he's 50 years old. I don't think this next contract will be his last. I'm going to sell on that.
Okay.
Ask me when we get to 2026.
Defo.
Yeah. And then I don't really have anything on projecting what races are going to be good or not. So I came up with a statement that ties into the overall vibe around the sport. Who cares if Formula One's surge of fan interest is waning after the DTS boom, or that American interest seems to have peaked and has plateaued? The sport has survived and thrived through the strength of its hardcore fans in Europe, not its casual supporters, and has done so without any significant presence for many, many years. Formula One doesn't need any of it in the future.
But it wants it, RJ. That's the problem. It's so clear and blatant that it wants it. It wants that American golden carrot so hard. And it's hard not to ignore that with the way F1's twerked for America in the last, I want to say half a decade plus, especially with its engineered insanity push since then. It really does want a huge presence in the US. They would not have gone from 1 Grand Prix to 3 very quickly if it wasn't for that. They're trying to milk this cash cow for all it's worth, and I think it's going to ultimately put people off. I see what the statement is saying here, because you're right. Formula One does not need America, and America does not need Formula One. They are fine without each other. We know this. NASCAR is still the number 1 racing series in North America.
And even that it takes a backseat to NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, big time college sports, particularly college football, which is college football is a needle that is causing massive seismic shifts in the college landscape. And all of that takes precedence over NASCAR. NASCAR takes precedence over anything else. I can vividly remember times where people were trolling about NASCAR Truck Series races get better view figures in America than F1 does. This is an irrelevant sport. You should go back to sticking to turning left for 500 laps at a time. I don't want to go back to those days. But it is fascinating to see just how, people who've gotten into the sport at a very unusual time have now tuned out because they realize that just like the Premier League, most match days are weird, but at the end of the day, it all averages out to Manchester City wins another title. Copy paste Bundesliga, Bayern Munich, Formula One, Red Bull / Mercedes. When we as Americans love the idea that any team can win any given championship, or at least most of them can win any given championship once all is said and done.
Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the fickleness of American fans who have now realized this is how the sausage of F1 is truly made. Yeah. And they're now turning off after realizing, what you mean? You mean not every season's 2021? No. No, it's not. It's if anything, they're the outliers. It's a mechanical sport first. It always has been over here.
NASCAR's been the same way. And as that peaked in popularity in the early 2000s, they realized man, we can't have guys running away with championships. We need to have it. We need to have something that's more like the playoffs. And 20 years later, NASCAR is only just now starting to get through its own identity crisis.
Yeah. we're watching that series transform its own image in front of our very eyes at the moment with the amount of stand-ins and ringers that we've pulled in recent times. There's like Shane Van Gisbergen and Kamui Kobayashi, Jensen Button, etc. You know, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, you know, it's a shame Indianapolis didn't really work out like that because only SVG really made a big impact by cracking the top 10. But we kind of knew that, given that SVG is a freak. But yeah, I buy this statement 110%. Like, I will happily put the mortgage on it. You're absolutely right. F1, F1 wise, like, it's never needed the casual American audience to survive. It's always been just fine. We've been through peaks and valleys when it comes to this sport's popularity. We peaked in the 2000s when this sport was on free to air. So yeah, like it doesn't need the casual Americans to start getting on the wagon for the sport to survive. It's fine. Right now, what they're doing with the US is playing with house money. I just think the Americans think that they have a more important role in this than they actually do, because let's be real here, it's a European sport, and it always has been in terms of hardcore popularity. Britain, which where I'm sitting in, is one of the most hardcore F1 fan-based countries in the world in terms of population for popularity of fans, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Formula One has done a genuinely good job of at least causing a dent in the US market, but it is still so far off where it needs to be. Like, it's hovering around NASCAR Xfinity level, which, okay, it's nice, but no one wants to be compared to NASCAR's B Series. So yeah, buy 100%. Buy hard.
You know me, as the American in this panel, I'm going to sell. I don't expect Formula One to keep drawing record figures for every United States Grand Prix that airs on free-to-air ABC, part of the Disney family with ESPN and all that stuff. But I look at how much money that the last television deal was worth between F1 and ESPN. A deal when it was first announced, they pretty much gave it away for peanuts, and now it's like exponentially above that. And I also think of like the Premier League. It is as UK a sport as you can get, but now it has significant, like, people here in the States give a crap about the Premier League.
Because
whether it's fans, it's fans, and it's also American people with American money, for better or for worse, impacting the landscape of that league.
Yeah, and that's because the Premier League has marketed itself so well in the last 2 decades that it's now got a huge influence in every major TV country in the world. The Prem is untouchable. Every other major league in Europe could wish it could pull in the TV revenue that the Premier League does. It smacks the rest of Europe around with its dick. Like they wish they could have other leagues that were anywhere near that. Formula One is never going to be that. And that's okay. That's honestly okay.
I would love to see, again, big time events. I don't want to go back to the Dark Ages and be buried completely underground. I don't want that. I think a lot of people in Formula One, they would be fine without less of the crazier casual audiences, I guess. But I want to come back to a time where I didn't have to struggle just to watch Formula One all the time. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I don't think we're ever going to go back to these days. But so just for that alone, I don't know. I feel like this needs to be sold on, because I feel like as long as Formula One is under the leadership structure that is in, they're going to have a vested interest in making sure that, if not up to where Premier League figures are in the United States, at least get to where it was at the start of the NBC deal.
That wouldn't be a bad place to start.
Yeah, and what has happened ever since.
Oh dear, that wouldn't be a bad place to start at all. Right, we're just about done here. Like I said,
I hate how much we agreed on all this stuff, right?
Annoyingly, we are quite similar-minded sometimes when it comes to reasonableness, but at least we're not each other's necks over IndyCar for once. That makes a change. Formula One is back this weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. We'll have a full breakdown of that. Will Verstappen make history? Probably. We'll have to wait and see on that one. We've also got IndyCar, a gateway this weekend at WWT. Will Alex Palou win the title this weekend? He's got a reasonable chance of being able to do so. Will Joseph Newgarden also complete a clean sweep of all 5 oval races this season?
That is Porsche Penske prototype driver Joseph Newgarden.
That'll be fun as well. Keep an eye on for that one coming up as well. Yeah, Joseph having a good one on that one. So yeah, will Alex Palou win the title? Keep an eye on that one for next week as well. And mentioned MotoGP in Austria will also be next week on the docket as well. So keep looking forward to that. Until next time, though, I've been Dre Harrison. He's been RJ O'Connell. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.